everyone, my name is Samantha and welcome to my YouTube channel Sewing in Switzerland. So today is a great one. We're going to be making the Sew House 7 Sauvie Sundress. So we're going on a bit of a sew along sewing adventure today, sewing journey together if you will. We're going to be making version 1 and that's with these really great pockets that have the facings. I've made it in a size 14 with no modifications. I do find that it comes up quite big, so do bear that in mind, especially around the hip and the tummy area. I have done the extra length on the strap, that is definitely worth mentioning. As opposed to doing like a full bust adjustment or an FBA, I've just made the strap a smidge longer, and that's just given me that kind of extra room in the bust area. So as always, if you have any questions or if something just isn't particularly clear to you or you're not familiar with that technique, do please feel free to let me know in the comments and I'll come back to you either with a tutorial or certainly some advice, that anything I can offer to help. So with that in mind, let's get into it.
Okay, so we're just going to get straight into it. I'm going to start with the very first step. So assuming that you have cut out all your pattern pieces at this point and pre-washed your fabric, and you're literally at the stage where we're kind of good to go now and start sewing. So we're going to want to stay stitch the neckline and the armholes here, and that's on the front piece, the back piece, the front lining piece and the back lining piece. So 4 pieces. We're going to repeat these exact same steps. So you're going to start at the very top of the shoulder edge or the point at which we will attach the straps here, so these kind of sticky up bits. And from there you're going to do a line of running stitches down to this middle fold, this middle kind of point where the V is, and you're just going to stop and back stitch, and that's just an ordinary running stitch. Don't increase the stitch length, don't shorten the stitch length. Back stitch here and here, just an ordinary stitch about 1/4 inch or about 6 millimeters away from the edge, and make sure that you start at the top point here. So we're just going to sew down, stop, sew down, stop, sew down to the inside of the armhole, stop, and on the other side as well, sew down and stop. And I'm going to be sewing in a white thread so you can see a real nice contrast on the fabric here, so you can kind of follow along. So I'll meet you back here and I'll just show you the stay stitching that I've done. So remember, this is the front bodice, back bodice, front lining and back lining that we're going to be doing this on. Okay, so I've just got the back lining piece here to show you with the stay stitching. So it doesn't need to be perfect, it can be a little bit wonky, but you just don't want that line of stitches to be anything bigger than 5/8 of an inch, which is what we will be working with when we attach the lining to the main dress piece. So the function or the purpose of the stay stitching as well is really just to stop that armhole and the neckline from stretching out. So where we've cut it and the way that we've cut it, it weakens the fabric. So when we're manipulating the fabric and we're kind of very, very hands-on with it, it can stretch out of place and you get a lot of give there. So to avoid that, you add this line of stay stitching here, and that just keeps everything nice and as it should be without it stretching out, so we don't get any weird gaping at any point later on. So that's the stay stitching done. Now let's move on to the next step, which is interfacing the back and front pieces of the lining pieces. Okay, so I'm just going to show you the interfacing on the back piece and also a couple of poppies. So for this, what you want to do is grab your interfacing, and this is for the back piece here, so you don't have to worry about the dart placement at the moment. And you're going to cut out your interfacing, and as you can see there's a little grey line of fabric. You're just going to put your interfacing very, very slowly, very slightly, gosh, I think it's time for a coffee, under the fabric line. So you can see I've lined it up pretty much with the stay stitching lines that we did. So you don't want it kind of flush to the edge. You want it just very, very slightly set back. But again, if it does kind of go over the edge, don't worry too much. It's not one of those things that you will then have to take off and redo at all. So it's just best practice, and it's what it's asked for in the instructions. But if you do go a little bit AWOL with your interfacing, then please do not worry. It's not one of those sewing situations where you have to undo anything at all. So I've gone ahead and pressed that down onto the fabric. So with your interfacing, if you're not familiar with that, you want to make sure that the bobbly side, the textured side, is face down onto the fabric. And then when you press it, it's that side, that sticky side, that has the glue. The soft, smooth side is the right side. So that'll be the side that faces up towards you. So give that a nice press so that it's nice and fixed on. And then I'm just going to grab the front lining piece and the front bodice piece, or like the main front piece that we're going to be making the front darts on. So let's get into that one next. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next step, which is the darts. Okay, so if you're not familiar with doing darts or anything to do with bust darts, you might want to watch my other video on bust darts, which goes into a lot more detail than what we're going to do here. So I'm just going to give you a tutorial and we're going to go through it together. But if you need that extra slow pace, then you might want to have a look at the other one as well, which is about 15-20 minutes long. So I'm going to start with the lining here. So what you're going to need to do for your bust dart is you're going to need a ruler, a pen or a pencil to mark the fabric with. So I've just got a chalk pencil here, something that will wash out. Sometimes they use biro, and that comes out. And you're going to need a pen pot as well. So I've got the lining piece here. You want to make sure that you've marked your notches with your scissors. So looking at this bust dart here, you can see we've got these little triangular notches here. So with your scissors, you just want to snip into the fabric on that corner there, and also here, because they're going to be what we use to make our lines in a minute. So then, depending what size you're making, so I'm doing a 14 in this one, you want to come and look in the middle here. I'm just going to zoom in. Cool. And you can see that we've got these circles here. So you want to pick the one on the size that you're making, grab a pin and just push that through the middle, going right through the fabric there. So I'm doing a 14, so I'm just going to go through the hole and then we're going to come out the other side like that. And then what you're going to want to do is lift up. You don't want to remove it just yet. So you want to take out the pins from the fabric here. And you just want to lift up that paper to where that, I'm just going to zoom out, where we've put that pin through here. You can see it runs this just there. So I'm going to mark where that pinpoint is. And then I'm going to flip it. I'm going to mark the underside as well. So you're just making a little mark with your chalk pencil there just to indicate where that is. And then you're going to want to take that pin out. And then we're just going to remove the paper here. And take that off. And you can see we've got our little chalk mark. So then coming across here, I'm just going to turn it sideways. We should have that little notch there. Just zoom in. That little notch on the very edge there that we made. So you want to grab your ruler and you want to line up that ruler with that notch and to the point that you just marked through that circle on your fabric. So I'm just going to move out slightly. And then I'm going to draw a line with a ruler that connects them all together. And then I'm going to find that other knot that we made here, and I'm just going to draw a line between that. And again, if you want this in much slower detail, then I'll link the other videos so you can have a look. So I'll just zoom out, and this is what's going to be our bust dart here. Ta-da! And then you just want to fold them together. Just zoom out a little more. We just want to fold them together. Grab a pin, fold them together, and you want to make sure that you pop a pin through that and then through the other side, so that it goes through both marks that you just made there. There we go. And we're just going to continue pinning basically along those lines that we've made here. So we're making that kind of inverted V shape. So I'm just going to pin that off camera, and then I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. Okay, so I've gone ahead and pinned the inside lines to see what that looks like here, so you can see where they're pinned together. So now we're going to stitch along that pin line. So just on the underside you can see where they've all been matched up, and we've gone as far as to match that to the very edge point there that we had, the very edge point of that circle that we made with the pattern piece there. Gosh, I think it's time to swap this tea for a coffee. So I'm going to run a line of stitches along here, along where we've pinned, and then when I get to that second to last pin here that you can see, I'll just zoom in. I'm going to shorten the stitch length to as little as it will go, and then I'm just going to carry on sewing with that really small stitch length, because you do not want to back tack here. Do not back tack off the end of your bust dart at all. So you're just going to make that stitch much smaller at the second to last pin, and just come along here and then go off the edge. And you want to leave a nice long tail, and then we'll meet back here to have a look at that. So just carry on watching for a moment so you can see what that looks like afterwards. So I'm just going to start sewing on the outside edge, go all the way here to the second to last pin, where I'm going to make the stitch length very short, and just come off that edge here. Okay, so I'm back from the machine, and here is that bust dart that we've just made. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So I've started on the outside, I've come all the way in, and I'll just come really close so you can see that's the normal stitch length where my right thumb is, and here between that second to last pin that we had, I shortened the stitch length right down to the shortest stitch it would go, so you can see the difference in stitch there to there, and then came off the end, and I didn't back tack. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to roll that around my finger. It's really hard to do through a camera. And then you're just going to pull that thread through here. So you're just going to basically, I might have to come off camera for this, make a little knot at the end. There we go, like this. Just a knot right on the end with that long tail. That's why we left that long tail. And then with your scissors, you're just going to snip that end off. And then what you want to do is go to the iron, and you want to push that down. So I'm just getting the right size. So you can see we've got the armhole here. And you want to, with your iron, press that down towards the bottom of the bodice. And you can see where the edge of that dart here, that triangle shape, lines up with the edge of that bodice. And then you want to flip it, and this is what it looks like on the right side. So with your iron, you just want to flip the fabric as well once you've pressed the underside, and just give it a really nice steamy press so that that sits really nice and flat there, and that you haven't got any bulk on the very kind of edge point here. So there we go, looking good. And then what you want to do is repeat that step on the other side using the other marking that we made when we flipped the fabric over. And again, you just want to line up those those edge notches that we made with our ruler and our chalk, and just line that up, and then repeat that step to get another bust art here. And you want to then do that with your main outside front piece as well. So you're going to have to do that another 3 times, and then press them all and, you know, trim your threads and whatnot, and then we'll meet back here. Okay, so the next stage, once we've completed and pressed our bust darts up here, is the pockets. So you want to go ahead and get your pocket bag, which is this kind of semicircle shape. I'll just lay it flat so you can see. And also your pocket facing, which looks a bit like that. And what you want to do is go to your overlocker and do some overlocking stitches on the outside. So just go around that larger piece here, and then on your pocket bag you want to do the same thing. You want to go around that outside crescent there with your overlocking stitches. If you don't have an overlocker, what you want to do is just go around that outside with a zigzag stitch, and that'll have the same effect. And if you don't want to use a zigzag stitch, what you can use is some pinking shears and just snip with your pinkers all the way in the exact same place, and that will stop it from fraying or falling apart. So as you can see here, we've got the bust dart up here, and then we've got this kind of slight semicircle shape. I'll just zoom in a sec, and you can see here, this is the pocket. So this piece is the front piece of the dress, and it is right side facing up, so facing towards us. So you want to make sure that your bust dart and your interfacing is on the wrong side, so facing down. And then we want the right side looking towards us. So I'm just going to zoom in on that pocket piece again. So the piece that you're going to need first is this pocket facing. And then right side to right side, you want to place that facing over the pocket like this. So it should sit nice and flush. And then you just want to pin that all the way around. Like this. Again, if you're using a particularly easily marked fabric, you can use clips instead of pins, and then you won't get those pin marks afterwards. So just gonna pin it the whole way around, and it's quite easy to see where it all goes. Okay, looking good. And then what we're going to do is, with 3/8 of an inch, we're going to stitch where we've pinned here. So it'll look like that. So we're just going to stitch all the way around this inside bit here at 3/8 of an inch. And you want to do that on the other side as well with your other pocket facing. And then we want to understitch it. So I'll meet you back here once we've done that 3/8 of an inch for next steps. Okay, so I've gone ahead and stitched that pocket facing down here, and you can see that with the white line of stitches. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to add a couple of snips all the way around, and you want to be really careful that you're not snipping into that line of stitches at any point. And all that does is basically allow a little bit more movement in the fabric here. So it allows the curve to naturally kind of sit a lot more flush without it pulling the fabric out of shape. We're just giving it a little bit more space to maneuver. So just really narrow snips. I like to go the whole way along for a pocket facing, but you can just do where the curved corner is if you prefer. Lovely, looking good. And then I've gone ahead and I've pressed the pocket facing away from the front piece there. So you kind of, with your iron, you want to push it away from the dress, okay, so that it sits kind of like this. And I wanted to show you this because you can see the pocket facing is like bigger than the space. So when you're pressing it away, you will get this kind of slightly flappy, folded over piece of fabric. So don't worry about trying to get it to sit flat, because when that's folded under, it's going to sit really nice and flush. So if you've got these kind of like little lumps and bumps, don't worry about that. That's normal. We're expecting that. So with the iron, you just want to press that away from the front piece here. And then we're going to go back to the machine and we're going to understitch. And to understitch, what we're doing is we're basically running a line of stitches very close to where we've attached the two here. So very close to that seam edge. And just a straight line of running stitches along where my finger is here. And what that does is that, let me flip this a bit, that stitch line will run between this seam edge here and that line of stitching that we've just made. So it'll sit somewhere in the middle, and that adds a bit of weight and structure to the pocket. It makes it all kind of sit together really nice, so that when we fold that pocket facing under, we've got this extra kind of nice flush piece of security and support for that pocket. So we're just basically stitching that seam edge down to the pocket facing. So you just want to very, very closely to that seam edge here, go along. Just run your stitches up there, and I'll just go to the machine and then I'll come back and show you what that looks like. If the fabric that you're using is particularly bulky, what you might want to do as well is with a pair of scissors, just trim down that seam that we've just made here for the pocket facing, just making it a little bit narrower, especially if your fabric is particularly bulky and thick. You might want to just make that a little bit pared down. So I'll go back to the machine and do that understitching stitch, and then I'll meet you back here just to show you what that looks like. Okay, so let's take a quick look at that top stitching there. So you can see that is the edge of the pocket facing, and I've just run a line of stitches all the way along. So it looks like this on the underside. So you can see between the seam there and the seam edge there, we've got that extra row of stitches, and that's your understitch stitch. So we're going to go back to the right way now, and what you want to do is just fold that under. So I'll just show you how that looks here. So this is right side of the bodice facing up towards us. So we just want to take that pocket facing and fold it under, and because of that understitch that we've just done, that's given that side a little bit more weight, a little bit more structure, it should fold under really easily and really nicely. And it shouldn't be too fiddly at all, it should just really go under. So what we want to do then is, once we've folded that underneath onto the wrong side, we're just going to go back to the iron and we're just going to press that down so that that sits nice and flat essentially. So then once you've done that, we're going to want to top stitch. So we're going to essentially want to stitch this facing to the main piece so that it's not kind of flapping around under there. So once we've pressed it, you want to take it to the machine with the wrong side facing up towards you, and you see here where we've got our row of overlocking stitches. What you're going to do is just stitch in the middle of those overlock stitches, and that will just hold that in place, and it means that you can follow the line of the overlocking stitches so that you'll know that the top stitching will look nice and neat on the right side up. So I'll just go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back here so I can show you how that looks. Now, I said I was going to do all the sewing in white so that you could essentially see it all better, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a grey for the top stitching so that it's not too obvious, because I think a row of top stitching in white would look a little bit silly, so I'm just going to switch to grey for the top stitching, but I'll come back here and I'll show you how that looks now. Okay, so this is what that top stitching looks like here. You can just kind of make out that line. I've had to switch to grey, otherwise I don't think I could wear it before the top stitching was white. So you can see if I flip it, I've stitched it all the way along that overlocked edge there, using that as my guideline, as my template, if you will. And then that gives us just a really nice finish on the top stitching. You can see that all looks really neat. It's not wonky. So if you use your overlocking stitches or your zigzag stitches or your pinking shear stitches, whatever it was that you used to finish that pocket facing edge as your template, as your guideline, then you'll get a really nice finish on the top there. So whoops. It's time for a coffee. I think now we'll move on to the top of the pocket so that we actually get the pocket bag. So that's our next step. Okay, so I've gone ahead and got the pocket bag here. And just to clarify, we're making pocket A. So if you're watching this and you're thinking there's an awful lot of steps, this is because we're doing pocket A with the facing, not pocket B without that. So you want your pocket bag here. And you want to lay it out basically as I have done. So you just want to basically copy the steps that I'm doing kind of verbatim here. So I'm just going to move the front of the dress out of the way. You want to lay that down, okay? Then you want to get your dress piece that we've just stitched the facing down on. And you basically want to overlay that so that the right side is facing up towards you. Right side of the pocket facing towards you. Everything the right side up is facing towards you. And then you basically want to line that up with the notches that we've got here. So there's a notch here. And you just want to pin them together. So you're just overlaying the top of that dress over the top of the pocket bag. So then you'll see we've got this added piece here. So again, you just want to follow that down, and there are notches on the top of the pocket bag there that you can use to line up. This is much easier to do off a camera. So here we go, looking good. So you just want to make sure that that's nice and flush, that it's not pulling too taut, that it's just laying nice and flat underneath the bodice piece there. And then what we're going to do is kind of exactly the same as what we did with the pocket facing, is we're going to just flip it over now. Lovely jubbly. And I'm just going to pin around this overlocked edge. So you just want to go all the way around. And we're essentially going to do exactly the same as what we just did. So once you've pinned it all down, go the whole way around, you're just going to use that overlocked edge here as your template, as your guideline. So just go back to the machine and just stitch in your in your top stitching thread colour, so whatever colour that may be. Just do your running stitch exactly like we did with the pocket facing, all the way around here on both sides, and then we will meet back here and that will be our pockets done. Okay, so this is what it looks like with the top stitching. You can kind of see, I'll just zoom in. Hopefully you can see that with the grey top stitching, and I've gone ahead and just done a running stitch on the sides there as well, just to kind of hold that in place so that it's not all like flapping about. You can see now that it's like super wrinkled and we've been manipulating it quite a lot. So we're just going to go over to the iron and just give everything a good juicy press. So just really get out any of those wrinkles that might have appeared from working the fabric now. And then you're going to grab your lining pieces, your straps and your front bodice, and we'll meet back here after we've gone ahead and pressed everything. Okay, so the straps are the next step for us, and they're super easy actually. We're just going to grab our strap piece. we're going to fold it so it's right sides together, so you'll be looking at the wrong side now. Sorry, I should have chosen a fabric that has a print or something identifiable. So right side on the inside, and you're just going to fold it in half. And then you're just going to pin down this raw edge, and we're just going to stitch 3/8 of an inch all the way down this edge here. Let me just fold it. So this edge where my fingers are, we're just going to stitch 3/8 of an inch. And then we're going to come back here where we're going to trim that edge and turn it right side out. And you want to do that with both straps, okay? Okay, so I'm back with the stitched up straps here. So we're just going to trim down that seam allowance there. Just going to halve it really. I just don't want to get any bulk when we turn the straps the right side out. Lovely. And then just trim off your thread ends. Then what we're going to do, and I'm going to do this off camera because it's going to take me 3,000 hours. You just want to, and you can get one of those Prim or Clover turning tools where it kind of hooks under it and then pulls it through. Or you can just do it as I'm doing it by kind of pinching the fabric, and we're just turning that the right side out. So it's a little bit fiddly. It can take a little while. So you just want to pull that through to the right side. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that with both straps. And then I'm going to give it a nice steamy press so that that seam line lies nice and flat. And we get this nice crisp finish on it. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this off camera. And then I'll meet you back here. Okay, so I've gone ahead and turned them out. And then I've given it a nice steamy press. So you can see we've got that seam line on the edge there now. So we're going to grab the front of the dress, right side facing up towards you. You're just going to pop the edge of the strap here. So with the seam line there that we've got on the side, you want that facing towards the armhole. And I'm just going to stick a pin in there. Oops. And then I'm just going to go to the machine and just baste a quick stitch across there. So you can see it kind of sits in between both of the stay stitching lines that we made. So yeah, you want to do a quick basting stitch or quick running stitch just across the middle there, about 1/4 of an inch or so, very, very close to the edge. And you're going to repeat it on the other side. So you can see, look, we've got our bust dart there. So it's right side to right side. And then we'll meet back here for next steps. Okay, so this is where we can really start to see it take shape. So we've got our straps here now basted down. So you just want them kind of folded towards the front on the right side of the fabric. So you can see we've got the bust darts over here. Wrong side is underneath. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab our lining piece, our front lining, so the one with the bust darts, which I have the wrong piece for, typically. So yeah, we've got the lining piece here now with the front bust darts. And you're just going to lay it on top like that. So right side to right side. So if you've got the front dress piece facing right side up towards you, then you want to lay the lining bodice piece right side down so that they're kind of on top of each other. You just want to line them up, and then we're just going to pin from the edge of the armhole all the way around. So you want to make sure that your strap here is laying nice and flush down the front, because you don't want it to fold or to catch or to get moved in any way so that it accidentally gets stitched over. You want it nice and flat running down the middle so it's kind of out the way. And then we're just going to carry on pinning down here and along. making sure that it all lines up nice and even. So we've got those V points there in the middle, and then up the other side. And then again, check that second strap is lying nice and flush. Just a couple more pins on that second armhole. Here we go. Lovely. So now what we're going to want to do is stitch them together. So we're going to start at one edge and we're going to do it all in one go. So with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to start at this edge here. We're going to come up all the way around. Then you're going to drop your needle and pivot your fabric. You're going to come along here to this edge of the strap point here. You're going to drop the needle, pivot. So down here at your V point, drop the needle, pivot, and up. And again, drop the needle, pivot, drop the needle, pivot. And then all the way down off this side. And that just makes sure that you get that really nice crisp finish. If you don't drop the needle and pivot, you'll kind of get a bit of a wonky stitch and it just look slightly out of place, not as flush. So you just want to make sure that you're dropping that needle and then pivoting your fabric so you're getting that really nice crisp right angle with the change of direction there. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to come back here and show you exactly how that should look. Okay, so let me just show you what that looks like. So I started at this end, and you can track that with me. Drop the needle, pivot, so you can see we've got that really nice right angle on both sides here, and that's what dropping the needle and pivoting your fabric around gives you. And if this is not clear and you're thinking, I don't really know what you mean, Sam, let me know in the comments and I can put together a pivot stitch guide together for you. So you can see how we've kind of tracked that along in one fluid movement. And then what I want you to do is go back to the machine and run a second line of stitches on top of the first line. So I've done this slightly ever so off the first line of stitches so you can see where that second line has started and finished, but I want you to go right over the top of them. So just use that stitch line as your guide and start about here and finish about here and just go over that V, that kind of middle V here. You just want to add a second line of stitches, and what that does is that reinforces the stitch line and it just makes it a little bit stronger because that's our weakest point where we've got that V shape there. So just go over it and reinforce that like you would if you were making a pair of trousers in the crotch seam, for instance. So yeah, just second row of stitches on top of the first one and then we're good. Okay, so one of the final steps on this one is we're just going to grab our scissors and we're just going to make snips into that seam edge there, the seam allowance. Just where the curves are, just allowing the fabric to move freely. And then we're just going to trim right down on the top of these straps as well. Just to remove any of that bulk. So they're on the armholes. Just add a couple of snips. And you just want to be super careful that you don't snip into the stitching there because it's really annoying when it happens. So then back to our V that we've double stitched on here. I'm just going to take the scissors and just snip into that V. Again, not crossing the stitching or whatever, just into that V. Doesn't matter if you snip the stay stitching there, that's fine. But don't go over your stitch line. So just, again, allowing that to have a little bit more movement. And then what we're going to do is we're going to push, we're going to hold the bottom of the lining with our hands and we're just going to kind of push it away. And then what we want to do is, with our iron, just kind of press the lining as best we can here away from the front piece of the bodice, but you don't want to grab the straps. Don't grab the straps and just pull them through. That's the step for after this step. So we just kind of want the lining to be pulled away from the bodice piece, and then we're just, with our iron, just going to press along here, and we won't be able to really get very far because we've got that kind of that curve there. So you just want to push with the iron and then just go as far as you can with the like we did before with the understitching. You're just going to run a line of stitches along that seam line there in your like top stitching threads. Use a colour that isn't going to be seen because we're not going to be able to go the whole way round because we've got a lot of bulk here. We've got the arm, the strap piece here, so you don't want to pull it out. We're not ready for that yet. We're just going to push with the iron. Make sure that you're catching that seam allowance and pushing it away with the lining, and then you're just going to run those stitches just to about there, and that will just kind of hold that nice and in place. Okay, you've also got the option of doing the same in the middle where we've got that V shape. So if you push the bodice lining away from the front dress piece, then you can kind of make out the V shape here as well. So you can also do a little bit of understitching here, just again on the lining piece to secure the seam allowance there to the underside lining. This is one of those steps, if you're pushing and pushing with your iron, or you're kind of getting into a little bit of a pickle, is obviously there's a lot of fabric going on, there's a lot of bunching. It can be one of those steps that you skip. You're not going to lose anything by not really understitching this piece here or the V here. Like, if you're going to skip one, that would be one that I would recommend you do skip. If you're just kind of getting in a bit of a pickle, there's a lot of fabric, you know, especially if you're using a heavyweight fabric, it might hang okay by itself anyway. So yeah, if you're struggling with that and struggling with not pulling the straps out, then yeah, you can skip that one. I won't tell anyone. Okay, so I've got to give it a nice press and pushed the lining inside. So I've kind of flipped it inside. As you can see, this is the inside here, and then pressed it. So that's our next step. If you've gone ahead with the understitching, then you want to pull the straps through and flip the lining piece so that the lining's now on the inside, so it's wrong side to wrong side. It'll kind of just happen organically, so kind of go with it as you're pulling the straps through. And I've given it a nice press to kind of see what it looked like. And you know, I think I'm going to add a row of stitching here. It doesn't say to do this, but I'm going to say this is optional, just to stop the facing moving. I think that might be a little bit annoying if you've got it on and if that starts to pull up. So I've given it a nice press, and I'm just going to go to the machine, and I'm just like we did when we attached it. I'm going to run up here and down here, up here and down here and off with my top stitching thread, just to give it a little bit of a focal point, and just to make sure that that lining doesn't shift underneath. So I'm going to go to the machine and just do that quickly. And this is like an option. Well, it's not optional, and that is not on the instructions, but I think that we'll just get a little bit of movement otherwise, and I would just like that to be nice and flush. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Okay, so what we're going to do now is attach the straps to the back piece of the dress. So you want to go ahead and get your back piece, and also the piece that we've just been working on. So the front bodice piece, and that's now got the front lining attached to it. So you're going to lay it right side up, right side facing towards you. And then you're going to grab your straps, and you want the right side of the bodice front, so not the side with the lining in it, the bodice or the dress front, facing on top of the back dress. So right side to right side. And then you're just going to line up your... Oh goodness, I've lost the pins. Okay, I'm back with pins.
And then you're just going to line up the strap exactly as we did before when we started the front piece with the straps. So we're essentially going to repeat the exact same steps. So remembering right side to right side, and now we're just going to go to the machine, and like we did before, we're just going to do a small stitch, just a basting stitch very close to that edge there, just securing those straps in place for when we attach the back lining piece. Okay, so this is where it starts to get a little bit on the bulky side, so you're just going to hang in there. So you want to now lay out, once you've basted your straps on, lay your back dress piece on the floor, right side facing up, so facing towards you, so you're looking at the right side. And then naturally, obviously, we've got the whole front piece dress and the front lining and then the straps that are attached here that will lay on top of that. But you just kind of want to manipulate the fabric slightly so that it's kind of bunched further down, so that it's essentially out of the way, because we're going to do exactly what we did before when we attached the front lining. Is you want to get the back lining, so you want the front back lining piece to face down so that it's essentially right side to right side. So you should be looking at the interfaced side facing up towards you, and then exactly as we did before, we're just going to pin that all the way along from the armhole here, exactly as we did previously, all the way up here to the top here where the strap is basted, all the way down along this V, up along the second V side, down the second strap and down the second armhole. And then like we did before, we stitched all in one go, starting at this edge here, and we did 3/8 of an inch, and then we dropped our needle and we pivoted, and we went along the strap line here. Make sure that the strap is nice and flat so that it doesn't move out of place, so you don't catch it when you're sewing. And then you drop the needle again here and pivot, come down onto this V and then up, drop the needle, pivot, along here, drop the needle, pivot, and then down around this second armhole. And then if you remember, we did the extra reinforcement stitches on the V where we went over for a second time. So that is essentially what we're going to do again. So everything that we have just done, we're going to repeat it now for this back piece. But it is going to be a little bit trickier because we do have this extra bulk now included from where the front piece is attached. So just kind of be mindful, make sure you've got enough room next to your sewing machine so that it's not dragging or catching or pulling towards you, because then it might either pull out of shape or your stitches might go a little bit AWOL. Okay, so I'm back from the machine, and now what we're going to do is, like we did with the front lining, we're just going to put our snips in. Just make sure you don't go through that line of stitching there. And I'm just going to come up a little bit further. Again, just allowing that fabric to stretch and maneuver, and then we're just going to trim the ends of the shoulders off as well, so it's not too bulky. And then just want to go along here a little bit, and also on the other side. Again, doesn't matter if you snip into that stay stitching now, but just be careful that you don't catch the fabric underneath or just snip right through it. Actually, it's very easily done, and you're thinking, no, I would never do that, but then you go ahead and do it and you're like, oh goodness. So again, I'm going to do exactly what we did before. I'm going to press that away from the back front piece, and then you can either understitch it if your fabric's not too heavy, for instance, understitch along there up to that strap, or as close as you can get to that strap. You won't get very far. And you can always do the same on the
the V shape in the middle as well. What I'm going to do is just press it all as it should be, and then like I did with the front lining piece, I ran that line of stitching just along the top, like a little top stitching number, and I quite like the look of it, and I think it gives a nice crisper finish than just kind of letting it hang around essentially. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you back here for our next steps. Okay, so here's that lovely back over top stitching that I've just gone ahead and done. I just like the idea of the lining being properly tacked in, and I know further on in the instructions it says, you know, to stitch in the ditch, but I don't want that extra movement going on. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn it inside out, and this is where it gets really exciting. Really fun part happens now. So we want it inside out. Oh, goodness gracious, there's a lot of fabric at this point, so you have to really fumble around with it. What we're essentially going to do is match up the lining piece front and back. We're doing the side seams now, so we're going to go all the way down the dress, just pinning the side seams. So I'm just going to go give the fabric a good shake so I can line it up properly to show you. Right, okay, so this piece that I'm holding in my right hand, this is the pocket, the front pocket. So this piece here with this overlocked pocket piece is the front piece. Okay, so you want to pull the lining away from that front dress piece. So the lining, the front lining that we just made, and you want to grab the bottom of the lining. And then you want to grab the bottom of the lining that you've again folded out on the other side as well from the back piece, and you want to line them up. And I promise this is going to make some sense in just a second, because you're probably looking at it thinking that's a puddle of fabric. What on earth is this woman doing? So you want to line up, oh fiddlesticks, the back lining with the front lining, and we're just going to pin that along the side here, the raw sides that we've got. And then you can see on the back lining piece we've got this notch, and that lines up with the, gosh, there's pins everywhere, it's chaos, I tell you. That lines up with the dart piece that we made on the front lining. So notch lines up with the front lining dart piece. So that just lets you know, bust dart, I mean. So that just lets you know that you're kind of moving in the right direction. And then you can see here the two lining pieces join up. So that's another indication that you're going in the right direction. So just keep adding pins. And then we'll just carry on down here. And then you can see we've got a second bust dart that we're going to encounter. And that's from the front dress piece. Just going to pop another pin in there. So it is quite bulky at this point. So you can see that we're moving in the right direction, because we've got another notch here that lines up, oh fiddlesticks, with the bust dart. So again, you want the bust dart pointing that way, pointing down, always pointing down. And then we get to the pocket. So we're just going to come along the pocket piece. Again, popping our pins in. You can pop as many pins in as you need. And we're just going to continue on to the bottom. Yay! And then what we're going to do is you're going to go and pin the other side in the exact same way. And then I'll just pin this bottom piece while I'm here. So we've reached what will be the hem here. And now we're going to go to the machine once you've pinned your second side. And then we are going to stitch all the way down the sides that we've just pinned with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then you're going to go ahead and either overlock that seam edge, or you can pinking shears it, or you can zigzag finish it and press it open. So you've got finishing options if you don't have an overlocker. So yeah, 5/8 of an inch down that side seam, and then finish with your preferred method on both sides, and I'll meet you back here. So that's just to clarify, we have pinned the back lining and the front lining together, as well as the back piece and the front piece together. So it's all one long straight line essentially now. Looking good. So we're going to go stitch down there and do the other side as well. 5/8 of an inch in your preferred finish method, and then we'll meet back here. Okay, so I've gone ahead and stitched all the way down the side of the lining pieces, and then the front and back bodice dress piece on both sides. And then what I've gone and done is the top of the lining piece, you'll notice, is unfinished. So I've gone and run a set of overlocking stitches around the edge to finish that. Oh, I need to trim that to finish that off. So we are looking good, and of course I've overlocked the sides as well. So what we're going to do now is just turn it the right way out. So we've got the moment of truth, which is very exciting. And I'll show you what it looks like on as well, because it's not always clear, is it? When you make these things and then you're just looking at a giant puddle of fabric, it's always good to see what that looks like on. So I'll just try and give it a little shake and lay it out. So we are looking pretty nice. Gosh, that has come together really lovely. So this is the back. So I'm going to flip it so that we're looking at the front with those delicious pockets that we made earlier. So obviously this is the top bit. We've got the lining on underneath. It is quite heavy now. There is a lot of weight to it. So another thing that I've gone ahead and done now that we're at that final stage is I've run a set of overlocking stitches around the bottom of the dress now, all the way around, front and back. And then I've done my guide stitch that I'm going to use to make my hem. So I'm going slightly rogue with the hem because I do want it to be a bit longer. So I do recommend at this point try on the dress and just check is that the length that you want it at. If you want it a little bit shorter, obviously you can make the hem much bigger or trim the ends off. So what I'm going to do now is I've done the overlocking stitches, and I've done a 5/8 of an inch hem guide here. So I'm just going to press that to the inside and then stitch around. And if you're thinking, what on earth is that white stitch hem guide for? I have made another video on how to make a really great hem that doesn't kind of fold around everywhere and is the same length all the way around, and it's just my favorite way to do a hem. So if you're struggling with any hems of any kind, then I'll link that video here as well, so you can have a little look-see at that one. So yeah, I'm just going to go off camera and press that underneath and stitch around so that we've got the hem finished as well, and then I'll come back and show you what that looks like. It's very exciting. And congratulations, you have just made your Sew House 7 Sauvie Sundress, and we did it together, and I am very, very proud of you. So congratulations. I really hope you enjoyed this sew along. I really hope you found it useful and helpful and you enjoyed being part of it. I certainly did. There's always this moment when you're making a garment, right? And you get to the very point where it starts to take shape and you can really envision how that's going to look on your body, and it's such a nice feeling when you reach that point. You think, yes, so I've nearly done it. So I'm very, very proud of you. You've achieved something great. You've learned some really great new skills, including bust starts, facings, finishings. We've done a lot, actually. We've done a lot in this session. So as always, if you have enjoyed this video, do please like and subscribe to my channel. I would very much enjoy that. Thank you so much, and see you soon. Bye.